So I'll just introduce each part of the panel. First, we have Chad Jackson. Chad serves as the executive director of the Jackson Family Foundation. He has been with the foundation and in corporate philanthropy with Jackson Healthcare for 13 years. In this role, he oversees partnerships with organizations serving all over the world. Jackson Family Foundation partners with organizations who are committed to fulfilling the Great Commission, which I shared that in my message yesterday, by sharing the love of Christ globally, focusing primarily on unreached and unengaged people groups. This is done through strategic partnerships with sustainable organizations and projects like us. The foundation focuses their grants towards the following strategy areas: so healthcare and medical, at-risk youth and families, which that would include our work or the work of Love Your City, evangelism and discipleship, again, we're right there, foster and orphan care, and education, and then finally microfinance. Jackson Family Foundation has been a key funder for 4 of Boy with the Ball's local teams. They began with El Niño y la Bola Costa Rica in 2009, when they helped us to build the community center in the El Triángulo Precario, which was instrumental in an entire slum rising out of poverty. Then they then funded Boy the Ball's launch of Velocity here in Atlanta, which was its second city, which was dynamic and critically important at the time. And finally, last year, they funded our efforts and the support of the 2 teams in Africa. So Chad, glad you're here. Thank you. And looking forward to what you'll have to say today. Next is Dr. Mark Woodruff, which most of you guys know pretty darn well. Mark has been the global board chair since 2012, which is a good run. And Mark has a passion for mentoring and networking young people to support them in fulfilling their destiny. He's originally from Pasadena, California, and he attended Harvard and then studied medicine at Tufts University. Mark is currently a physician at Whole Person Healthcare in Omaha, Nebraska, which is a pretty dynamic and amazing business model itself to, if you ever want to hear some interesting stories. And that's where he lives with his wife, Karen, who is also on Boy with the Ball's global board. Mark has served as the pastor emeritus for Covenant Family Church since 1992, when he helped found it. And under Mark's leadership, Boy with the Ball Global has grown from 3 local organizations to 7 local organizations. So Mark, great to have you and excited for what you'll have to say today. We're going to go on to Sam Bretzman. Sam's the owner of Bretz Media, an SEO and content strategy firm for attorneys and law firms. And Sam's story you'll hear several times across these 3 days. But as a student at Concordia University, Sam traveled to Nairobi, Kenya in 2009 and met many of the current leaders of the Fikisha Boab Kenya team. And after discovering the impact of their work in the Kawangware slum, these leaders, he agreed along with Alyssa to work together and another team of students to work together with the Kenyan leaders by forming Fikisha USA to help raise resources to expand the work in Kenya by providing scholarships for street children. It's a pretty innovative idea. And since that time, Sam, his wife Alana, and Alyssa Magnuson have worked tirelessly with churches and marketplace leaders to raise $80,000 to $100,000 a year for Boy the Ball in Kenya. Pretty powerful stuff, and looking forward to hearing from you, Sam. And then last but definitely not least is Kim Hackbarth. Kim is a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. We have a really large group of Wisconsinites in this conference this year. I don't know what's happening, but I like it. She got her feet in the international travel kind of world in the cruise line industry. And then Kim and her husband, Alex, are the owners of Alma Travel Group, a travel business dedicated to providing a platform to care for people in communities and to create experiences for travelers that transform their lives, driven by purpose and passion. She is the chairman of the board for Boy the Ball's team in Costa Rica, El Niño y la Bola Costa Rica, and she formerly served on our staff there. Kim is unusually gifted a leader at connecting individuals and businesses, including multinational corporations like Intel and Western Union, with bringing about lasting change. And these talents and Kim's passion for Boy the Ball have just helped the team there complete the purchase, or be very close to completing the purchase of our new community center in the Los Cuadros slum. So good job, Kim, and welcome. So with that, here we go. We're going to get started. And so I'm going to start by asking the panelists just some more directed questions. Then we'll open it to some more general questions, and then we'll open it to you guys asking questions. Kathy just told me to smile more, so I'm going to be smiling more. Chad, could you tell us briefly about Jackson Healthcare from a business perspective? Just help us to understand kind of what you guys do. And then also why the company made the decision to not only attempt to make a difference here in Atlanta, where you guys are based, but also to be involved globally.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So Jackson Healthcare is the holding company for about 15 healthcare staffing, search, and technology companies based here in Atlanta. So the mission of Jackson Healthcare is to improve the delivery of patient care and the lives of everyone we touch. And so we try to leverage our sort of expertise in healthcare and engage our 1,500 plus associates and our network of healthcare providers to try to give back and serve as much as they can. Since we are based in Atlanta and most of our providers are in the Atlanta area or in the US, we do a lot locally through our corporate philanthropy. So we try to get them engaged in serving and using their skills in healthcare to try to give back. So we did a lot this past year with COVID. But through the foundation, we also try to make grants and invest in ministries and organizations, all over the world. And the reason for this is we started to better understand the need and that, nearly 2 billion people in the world, close to a third of the population had little or no access to the gospel. Some who had never even heard the name Jesus. And and then on top of that, learning that close to less than 1% of all Christian giving is going to these places that have little to no access to the gospel. So, we wanted to try to, we saw this imbalance and wanted to try to invest in the focus areas that Jamie mentioned to serve these people that, many who had never heard the name Jesus. So.
That's great, Chad. Just a quick second question for you with that is, do you see an impact on your employees and even on your business by your decision to kind of turn into engaging that mission?
We do, yeah. We've seen a difference in the employee, and it's been hard this past year with COVID to try to engage everyone in giving back and serving. But, fortunately through technology, we've been able to do some things virtually to engage our associates in serving. But yeah, it definitely changes the culture and impacts just the way people do business to know that through the business, they're serving others and giving back.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chad. A few years ago, when we first moved to Atlanta, we picked up a business journal, and Chad's business was named like the top large employer in Atlanta. So, sometimes you'll see little businesses turn to make this kind of a difference, but really, really dynamic to watch a business of y'all's size and impact be not only a good business, but then be great at making a difference like this. So we'll turn to Kim. Kim, and you're working in Costa Rica, both with Boy of the Ball, and then Kim's worked beyond Boy of the Ball. You've done a lot of connecting companies and individuals and businesses with really making a difference and in a big way, particularly with Love Your City. So I think what we'd like to ask you is, what is it that draws most people in the business world into wanting to make a difference? And what are some of the creative ways that you've actually seen that happen?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you all. So I really think that we, like Anna said, when Boy with the Ball began, it was much a movement around developing young people, but without the families and without the communities, we know we can't do that. Without community engagement, we know that businesses aren't as good as they can be. But there's a really tricky thing that sometimes we treat our young people different than our businesses. And I don't think that we always need to do that. Finding, we strive to help our young people look for vision in their lives. What are their giftings? How can we help them use the lives that in their hands to make an impact and live like Jesus in this world? And we can do the same thing for businesses. So really looking at a business and seeing and understanding what are their resources, what are their giftings, and looking at them for what they are instead of looking at what we're doing. What do we need? What does our community need? What are we doing? And really understanding their heart. How do they want to give? What are their desires is makes a world of difference. And a lot of businesses want to engage with organizations that they can find a place for their gifts in that. And a lot of that deep relational building is what we do on an everyday basis, connecting deeply with the community. And when there's the trust built between the business and what we're doing, they know that the connections that we have with the community are authentic. So those bridges can be built between the community and organizations. I think those authentic relationships happen over time. One great example is that we have a partnership with a communications firm called Millennial here in Costa Rica. And it's a relationship that we have grown little by little over time. And it's friendships that have built. They've given a little bit here. They've come to a few activities there. But they understand the heart of what we do and they feel a part of the family. This particular moment, we really need a communications firm to help us. As Jamie said, we're working at purchasing a community center. And so to then say, hey, this is your moment. We need you guys now because this is your gift. This is what you guys are amazing at. And this is what we need right now. So for me, it's really that, like looking at what they have and understanding those resources and really being a bridge between our work and the work that they're doing and coming together around the community.
Thanks, Kim. Kim is a great leader. And so typical of Kim, when I mentioned that she would participate in this panel, she was like, well, what if I could have a leader from Intel or a leader from this person? Or she was thinking of all those connections. But I think that, which first of all shows you why she's great. But one of the things that you see in Kim, and if you're a local team, I hope it's infectious. I hope that you can somehow catch it across your screen, is that she's not seeing this as a group of people that have money and a group of people that don't have money and how can you get it. She's seeing all of the different pieces across your city as people with resources that desperately yearn to be connected. And her faith for that and kind of the buoyancy is right. It's just right. And it's wonderful. So I'm glad you allowed us to make you agree to be on this panel. All right, we're going to go all the way out to California, and everybody be nice to Sam. It's earlier there than it is for those guys in Kenya right now. Which brings me to my point as we ask you a question. Sam, you've woken up at 6 a.m. in the morning to participate in a couple of calls with Kenya a week for more than a decade. And then you've spent a great deal of your time and really at this point, your life now, connecting with churches and business people, students and families to make it possible for the Fikisha team or the Boy the Ball Kenya team to help young people, including street boys. So that's quite a sacrifice, quite a commitment. And it's generated a lot of funds, which has helped a lot of good things happen. But here's the question. Why have you done this? Why in your right mind have you done this? And what would make that kind of sacrifice worth it to you and to Alana?
Well, good morning, everybody from California. The number one thing, and I feel like this is a lame answer. It's not, but the number one thing is the Lord's calling. When He puts something on your heart, in your path, when He calls you to something, you need to respond. This was something where it's almost like you couldn't not respond. I mean, you can, but you know that things will be better if you do. I think when things first started 12 years ago, it was fueled by good intentions and then the excitement and adventure of everything. Then things got hard. They got really hard. And it was just ultimately the grace of God, and with a little bit of probably sheer will, just to make sure that things didn't fall apart. And they probably would have if we didn't end up meeting you, Jamie, and Boy with the Ball. And then we met you guys, and over the years, there's been a transformation of individual growth for myself, for the team in Kenya, for Alyssa, for pretty much everybody involved. Growth as a team, deeper understanding, deeper relationships, understanding the Lord better, learning how to walk with Him, and it has turned from that initial excitement of everything when it first started to the really hard, I don't want to do this anymore, to a true joy. There's still plenty of hard parts and hiccups and things that come along, but it's really an honor to be a part of. It's one of the joys of my life. The other thing that I think about with this is Paul writes about, or uses the analogy of there are many parts but one body. 1 Corinthians 12. And he's talking about that in the spiritual gifts sense. I see that a lot in where we're called to work. Some people will be called to work in Kenya, some will in the US, some in Costa Rica, and so on. And we need to work really hard to be faithful to the things and places that we're called to be. And that way everybody gets reached. Selfishly, I would love if everybody gave all their time and all their money to Kenya. But obviously that would be not helpful to a lot of other places. So for me, when it comes down to it, I believe that Kenya is a place that the Lord has called me to be in. It's an honor to be a part of that. And hopefully that never changes.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. It's interesting to note that Sam shaved for this day. I've been around him the last few weeks and he has not been this clean shaven. It is also interesting to note that for Sam, for Kim, and for Mark, these three leaders, the things that they've been doing would be in as volunteers, really. So the taking time where you're not being compensated to turn to make a difference. So first of all, grateful for that, but also interesting. So with that, we'll turn to the third of those volunteer dynamic marketplace leaders, which is Dr. Mark Woodruff. And Mark, as we're speaking about discipleship, it goes without saying that one of the ways that the Lord disciplines us is through finances, one of the big ways. However, as a giver and as a disciple of Jesus, how have you seen the Lord disciple you and Karen into being generous? I think you're muted, Mark.
How many times did I say, make sure you unmute before you start? I love this question. I didn't have anything to do with it, choosing it, but Jamie did, and I like it. I think through a lot of opportunities to go with God on the adventure, one of the adventures of the many adventures that I'm sure he's simultaneously doing around the world, and being invited to be a part of that. You can't outgive God. That's one of the things that we have learned over and over and over again. The more you give, the more you're given responsibility for. The parable of the talents explains this principle, but it's been very, very true in our lives. I'm thinking about times when God asked us to do things financially that we couldn't have come up with on our own. So, for example, there was a young couple in our church when we were very young, and God told us to give them a couple $100s. And that was a lot of money for us then. It wasn't a huge sacrifice, but it was a real sacrifice. And it didn't make a lot of sense. They were doing just fine financially. But later, years later, the implications of that gift became apparent. And we would never have thought of doing that on our own. And so that's what I mean about getting invited into the adventure. That giving is a lot of fun. It's really exciting to see that you can be part of what God's doing. The other thing that I think he disciples you in is faithful in a little, faithful in much. When we were newlyweds and I was in medical school, we had next to nothing. We were living on a few $100s a month. But when you give at that point, you learn, and that's much harder. Giving a few dollars when that's your tithe is much harder than giving a lot when you have a lot. So if you can learn those lessons, I see a lot of people who start off saying, I'll give once I'm doing better financially. Well, you'll be doing better financially once you give.
That was kind of a drop the mic moment. That's great. You know, you've never really lived until you've been on a road trip across California with Anna and Mark. And Mark takes you to all the In-N-Out burgers and tells you about the secret menu. So just to say that fundraising can be.
We lost you, Jamie.
Sorry, they muted me wisely, knowing what I was about to say next was probably completely inappropriate. No, but one thing that I think is interesting about all of this is you're seeing the power of generosity, both for businesses and for individuals, but you're also seeing the power of like giving yourself to something and getting to be a part of something, you know, through what you heard with Sam and Kim as well. And that's in really everybody's. But so you could say, well, what's so exciting about that with Love Your City? And what Love Your City does in a lot of situations like this is it provides a sense of strategy and wisdom and impact to that. It is a really, really great place where when you're giving and you're making a difference, most of the time you're giving just because the Lord says to. But over time, God will start to pull you towards also caring about impact and doing it well. And so to have partners where the relationships are real, where the conversation is ongoing, and where both sides are seeking the Lord and working together is really critical. So again, as you are listening, would you guys please be thinking of questions and popping them in there, because we're kind of in a situation here today where as we're going through this panel, you're going to hear some great things, but you're also going to have some opportunity to really kind of respond and learn together. So we're going to stay with you, Mark. And as we're speaking about, you know, all of this, it is making me think of something that we were talking about together as we were conceptualizing this panel. And at that time, as we were first talking about the idea of bringing together a panel like this, you mentioned some things that you wished that you had known and maybe that we had known when Boy with the Ball first began inviting people to be involved in giving to help Love Your City happen. And so what were those things so that the leaders here can gain the advantage of hearing them earlier than we did?
So I don't remember that. No, I'm just kidding. I have my notes right here. So I'm going to take a couple of minutes. Hope people will understand. And I hope that I can help you make an adjustment in your mindset. I want to ask a couple of questions. How many of you live to do fundraising? Raise your hands. What do you think of when you hear the word, fundraising? And what feelings does the word fundraising elicit? I can tell you early on, as part of the Boy with the Ball board, we spent a lot of time and energy. We brought in outside trainers dealing with how to raise money because we weren't very good at it. And we didn't like it. We were not excited about it. And the realization that eventually came, and it took a long time. We were looking for the trick, the right script, the hook, how come these people were raising all this money for an organization that wasn't nearly as good as what we were doing? And yet we were struggling to make our budget. And what I want to tell you is, it's not fundraising that's the problem. It's our issues with money and ministry. And I'll say parenthetically, I can't represent this fully right now in large measure because of time. But if you want to dive into this arena further, there's an interesting book called The Energy of Money that my wife has been teaching me about for a long time, and I'm now studying. And it's worth a read. Let me just say that. So the issue is our attitude. Most of us avoid this issue when we can, and when we can't, and I'm using notes, I hope you don't mind, we approach it like taking out the garbage. We try to make it as quick a trip as possible and just hope that we won't have a slip or a tear in the bag. Success is just getting it over as quickly as possible. I'm here to tell you we need to change our attitude. And we don't need to change our attitude like, buck up, pal, kick yourself in the fanny and get going. We need to actually open our minds to the truth, because we are believing lies, again, based on our own experience and our own issues with money and ministry. Fundraising is a ministry to the donor, and it's a ministry that they need. You are gifting them with an opportunity to make an investment with kingdom eternal returns. Now think about that. If somebody comes to you and says, I've got this stock, you've got to buy this stock, it's going to go up tenfold in the next 10 years. You would be so excited. Well, you'd probably be cynical and not believe them. But if you trusted them, you would be so excited. That's the kind of opportunity for investment that we are offering. The return on kingdom investment is way more than tenfold. You are providing that person with an opportunity to be blessed. Bob Mumford, a long time ago, told the story about traveling through the South in his VW Bug, and he was ministering in churches with dirt floors that had 20 members, and they were all poor. And he came out of one of these places and was getting into his car, and the deacon came out and pressed 2 crinkled dollars into his hand. And he said, oh, that's okay. You guys keep that and invest it back in your church. And the deacon got really mad at him. He said, you are robbing us of the opportunity to be blessed. If you don't take this gift, you are stealing our blessing. And that's what we have to realize, is that by allowing these people to invest in the kingdom with us, we are giving them the opportunity to be blessed. You're also giving them an opportunity to get involved in something special and miraculous. Boy with the Ball has phenomenal results. Amazing things happen. You've all heard the stories, you've lived the stories. Everybody wants to be a part of that. It's like the winning team in a sport. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon, or most people do. So you don't have to apologize or feel guilty for asking someone to give to your ministry. And remember, and this is should be very free, they are not your supply, God is. If they choose not to be part of God's purpose, or if they're not meant to be part of this particular ministry, then God will find someone else. So I want to encourage you to go into fundraising situations with quiet confidence in God and His ability to supply your need, to recognize that you are not begging, you are providing opportunity for these people to invest in the kingdom. And that is one of the greatest gifts you can give someone. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Quiet confidence, go with quiet confidence. And one of the things that, Mark, you said when we were talking, and thank you for today, you said that you wish we had known that when we go and we ask and somebody says no, it doesn't mean anything bad about us, and it doesn't mean anything bad about them. And
Right.
I think if you can get that out of the way, it makes you a lot more buoyant like Kim. And then we do better work. Also, as you were talking, and as many of you have been talking this morning, it's reminded me of one of those consultants that we traveled with in California. One of his assistants said to it, we said, we're just not very good at this. And she said, oh, you guys are great at this. You walk into communities all the time, all over the world, and build relationships from scratch, and then see them grow into being like life-changing relationships. So she said, you just have to do this with a new group of people. And so, so think of this as love your city walkthroughs in different places. But thank you very much, Mark. All right, we're going to go back to Sam. And Sam, as we've said many years ago, you took the trip to Kenya. That became the genesis of Fakisha. And that trip has been a part of changing your life and the lives of thousands of people. While Moses and Frank were present in Kenya growing the impact of the Boy the Ball team, you returned stateside, helping connect funders to the mission of what's happening abroad. As you've done this, and as you were doing this, where do you see the dynamics of Love Your City take place in reaching out to donors? And then just as you think about that, also, how does the act of giving help donors the way the act of going helps volunteers back in Kawangware?
So I love this question. And first I want to say, like, Mark, I thank you for sharing. I mean, everything that you said was impactful. And Kim, I want to give kudos to you as well, because I feel like most of what I'm about to say, you already said in your first little monologue there. But so this gets me really excited. Both in working with donors, if I'm looking just at fundraisers, and in working with my business relationships, the heart and the principles of Love Your City are exactly the same. And I mean, if you're going to sum it all up in one sentence, it's all about relationships. And it just like you could stop right there. Going back to the coach, team, and playing field analogy that we like to use, the donors are the playing field. Like so often in Boy with the Ball, we just talk about, not just, but we talk about going out into the communities, and that's where our playing field is. The donors are just a different version of that. Or if I'm meeting with business contacts, that's just another version of the playing field. When you walk into those situations, whether it's meeting with a donor, a potential business client, a current business client, you're looking to hear the Lord's voice and respond to it. Always looking to connect with the people, with whoever you're meeting with. If they give, that's great. If they become a partner or a client from a business sense, that's great. But that isn't the main goal. The number one goal is to connect with them and to respond to where the Lord is working. The vision is much bigger than trying to get them to be a client or to give money. It's seeing that the Lord loves them, seeing the potential in their life in the kingdom. Can they become a donor who makes new donors? Just like we look to try to build disciples who make disciples, I want to build donors who build donors. Can they do the same stuff? Can they learn to hear the Father's voice and learn to respond to that as they're walking out in their lives? Can they become a business owner whose heart gets set on fire to not only give, but to utilize their business as a force for the kingdom? And can they impact other business owners to do the same thing? I was literally on a call on Wednesday last week with a young web designer from Hawaii. I'd never met her before. And we just started talking, and she had a lot of questions just about business and getting started. And I'm not super far along in my business, but I'm a few steps further than she was. And so I was able to just share, and I hopefully help her along a little bit. And throughout the process of this, Kenya came up, and I was sharing a little bit about that. And honestly, the Lord just worked. Now, I don't believe that she's a believer, but she watched a little video I sent to her. And then she became a donor. Like, she's given $25 a month right now. It's not a whole lot, but I mean, that's cool. That was from one call from someone who we had never met before. But I know, like, the Lord is at work in that relationship, and there will be further conversations, and there will be this cool relationship probably over the course of years of seeing her and hopefully helping her to build her business, and then ideally getting to that next level where it's not just, hey, I want you to do well, or even giving, but do that. Like, you're going to have a lot of clients, and so do this for your other clients. It's all the same. It all goes back to relationship. So just like in Kawangware, we utilize programs to connect with people. It's just on-ramps into people's lives. Here, I utilize Kawangware to connect with people, or I utilize my business to connect with people. But it's all the same. It's back to relationships, and it's back to learning to hear the Father's voice and respond to it.
That's great, Sam. Very good. We are going to do 2 more directed questions. We'll first go to Chad, and then we'll go to Kim, and then we're going to kind of open it up with some general questions that anybody on the panel can step forward and share about. And we'll go as long as we have time. So first we'll go back to Chad, who we started with. Chad, for a lot of people outside of foundations, foundations can be a little hard to understand. And I know you might say that for people within foundations, they can sometimes be hard to understand. They make their decisions about how grants are awarded often behind kind of closed doors. So it's difficult for people to know what's going on there. So would you help us by peeling back the curtain a little as far as how that happens, and just answer some questions or talk a little bit about what are you guys looking for in a missional partner, and how do you guys as a group decide whether something is a worthy investment?
Yeah, so it's such a good question. And you could probably just play back what Dr. Mark said, and that would kind of sum up why we give to who we give to. But yeah, the reality is we do get several requests for grants and for partnerships. And, we do have to say no a lot. We can't say yes to everyone. And so for us, the way that we choose who we potentially partner with. So I'll just read this quote. I have this quote up in my office to kind of remind me of why I come to work every day. And this quote is from Dr. David Platt, who is a pastor at McLean Bible Church, former president of the International Mission Board. And this quote is from a book that he wrote a few years ago called Radical. But the quote says this: "There are many organizations aimed at serving specific needs in the world, but people's greatest need is Christ. To meet people's temporary physical needs apart from serving their eternal spiritual needs misses the point of holistic biblical giving. If we are not careful, we will spend our resources on short-term projects that do not have long-term effects." And so, yeah, for us, we want to partner with ministries and organizations that are really taking a holistic approach and meeting both, people's physical urgent needs, but also their spiritual eternal needs. And so, there's a lot else that goes into that, geography and of course the areas of focus. We try to do that through healthcare and at-risk youth and discipleship and evangelism. But to sum it up, we really want to partner with ministries who are taking a holistic approach.
Yeah, that's great, Chad. We just in the thinking about relationship, we had Chad and his wife Carlin and their kids all out with us walking through the community on Love Your City the other day. That was wonderful. And it is interesting to note, as far as the part of relationships, is that Chad's foundation is a high impact foundation. We also, it would be impossible to have a panel like this and not mention Matt Brennan and Barnhart, who knows Chad, who's also been really very dynamic for all of us. But both relationships came through a personal connection. Matt Brennan went to a camp that we all ran years ago. And I met Chad's wife when she was a customer at a retail store that I worked at. And our staff kind of connected with her, and we were going to go watch a basketball game, I think, that she was going to be a part of. So there's just no way to divorce relationship from kingdom pieces. So thank you, Chad. So Kim, for the last question that's more directed, what for you is the secret to connecting a solid individual or business with a cause or a team that's making a meaningful impact? And then what are the ingredients that you see as critical to these kind of partnerships forming and being successful? And then if you want to give any examples, we'd love it.
I think there's so many great answers to that question coming from Chad and Sam and Mark. So this will just be one more. And in looking at this question beforehand, I really just came up with one line that businesses don't give to foundations, nonprofits. People give to people. And when with every relationship that we are cultivating and building within the business world as a team, the same as our, like Sam said, the coach, team, and playing field analogy, if we're looking at their coach and understanding all of the things that we've already talked about, where is their place to give? What is their ministry that the Lord has put in their heart? And work on building those personal connections. And that's really where a lot of the fruit later comes from. Like you said, Jamie, I immediately kind of looking at these questions, I was like, oh, I have the perfect person to talk about this, but I'll just tell her story instead of, she's not here with us today. But one really great example is a couple years ago, we had a little coffee and tamales end of year kind of event. It was very small within the organization. We were going to have 60 people and do this big thing, and it ended up being very small. We had maybe our team, a few key volunteers, and our board, and everybody invited a couple of people. So we ended up being a pretty small, intimate group. And at this group, there was a woman that came named Glenda. And Glenda was a friend of one of our board members. And she also, at this little coffee meeting, realized that she had gone to high school with another one of our board members. So there was a lot of really deep, long-term connection. And at the beginning, our team kind of said, we're a little disappointed that our event isn't maybe quite as big or what we expected, but who knows what the Lord is doing here. So we just have to be at peace with that. Turns out that Glenda is a very key figure in Intel here in Costa Rica. And through that coffee meeting, and though the personal relationships that she had with the two board members, as well as the relationship that she began with our team, really started to flourish, and we started spending more time with her. And through that, Glenda has really found herself as a part of our family and goes into her playing field every day and is consistently working with her team in Intel about how they are using their gifts and what they're giving to, and pushing them to seek their ministry, right? They might not call it their ministry within Intel, but she finding her place within us has really pushed that within her team. We recently, through Intel, applied for a small grant for a special project, and we didn't win. And one of her team members was so kind of captured by everything that Glenda was saying and doing and teaching within their program, that this team member personally, through their own funds, gave our organization the money for what we had requested within this program. And so all of that came from a coffee meeting, you know, and that was personal connection more than any sort of intentional meeting with the head figures at Intel. So always just keeping in mind that it's people that are giving to people is something that in walking out gives me, like Mark says, a lot of silent confidence. We're not up against a giant just looking for a little bit of help here. No, we're all looking for our place to serve. And in doing that, I think, again, kind of to repeat some of these same things, we are giving people the opportunity, providing a place for people to serve and find their footing in the ministry that God has put in their hearts.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. And as you're saying that, one of the things that happens for us is our faith levels wane. Sometimes we see ourselves as smaller, but sometimes we start not seeing things the way they are. Like, so the Intel Corporation for many years has won the Corporate Social Responsibility Global, award, so they're the best. So we go into a meeting instead of seeing it the way that you just described it, where it's just people meeting with people, and we go into it like, oh, this is the moment that could change everything. And if they just see me, and it's just pretty silly and probably weird for them too. So I appreciate you saying that. All right. So if you are out in the crowd and if you're on Facebook Live or you are here, this is really the moment where we're going to take some of the questions. Some of you have already posted questions. We're excited for that, and we'll get to those. But also maybe at this point, I'd really ask you to kind of think a little bit, like, what does this bring up for you? Now, for sure, some of this, and I think there's been a lot of comments online as this panel has occurred, where people are really being impacted by what's happening. So sometimes you're a little speechless. You're kind of like, whoa, this changes everything. And so I totally get that. And some of the questions that you may need to ask would be, grab a hold of a global team member or grab a hold of your team leaders in a country and have a good conversation, or a board member. So please, we do understand that some discussion will happen that way. But for a few of you, or for any of you, there could be a question that you would really like, okay, I understand that, but what about this? And so go ahead and just take a second and and throw a question out there. And we won't have time to get to every question, but I think it's a good exercise, even as far as this all demands a response from us. So, okay. So for these questions, you guys on the panel, this will take us getting used to this a little bit, but I'm just going to say a question, and then, you'll unmute yourself and you'll go ahead and answer it. And there could be some weird collisions where two people unmute at the same time, but we'll suffer it together. And I think it's really important to hear from all of you. So not everybody has to answer every question, so don't feel pressure that way, but please answer what's in your heart to answer. And by the way, if you hear something somebody else says that you just want to comment on as well, don't be afraid to do that. This can kind of be a little bit more of a dialogue. So we'd like to turn a little bit to talk about the challenges of trying to make a difference. And the question would be, what has been hard for each of you in what you've wanted to do with your generosity? And I know you may be like, yeah, I mean, the difficulties could be that there's a swing and a miss. The difficulty could be that this is the more arduous part where you really have to kind of go through it. There's a lot of ways that you can encounter difficulties. So I'll throw that out there, and then look forward to whoever wants to step in and answer.
So Jamie, the question is, what is difficult? The difficulties in giving?
Yeah, just any challenges that you guys would want to point to as far as your overcoming of it. Because I think the local teams, they all know their challenges in this, but I think coming from the other side of it, what challenges do you have when you're being generous? What challenges do you have when you're looking to give? What challenges do you have when you're looking to connect those who could give with Love Your City?
Two things that come to mind for me. One is the fear of rejection, which Mark addressed. But like, you want to go and ask someone to give, and then if they say no, you start to get all these doubts either about yourself or the cause or whatever. And so continually being grounded in kind of either you, Jamie, or Mark had said it, but where it's not an indictment of yourself or of the organization or anything like that. It just is, it's trusting in the Lord that He's going to place the right people at the right places and times to give. And so that's one piece. The second piece is I think that myself and probably most people don't give enough because we are concerned. I mean, again, this is going back to what Mark had said, but like you cannot give the Lord. And we typically don't believe that. And so, we don't really believe it. We may say like, oh yeah, yeah, that's great. But like when it comes down to like actually writing the check or actually giving the money or whatever, like, I mean, how many of us have been in the situation where you've been like walking down the street and a homeless person's been there asking for money, and you look in your wallet and you've got like a $1 bill and a $20 bill. And like it's like a lot of work to pull out the 20. When in like the big scheme of things for, I know there's different contexts here, but for a lot of us, it's like, it's not going to matter. Like do the 20, it's going to be better for everybody.
Very guru-like, Sam. That was great. Hard hitting there. Anyone else want this one?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just making a note. Maybe I heard the question wrong, hopefully not, but what I think I heard, when I'm giving, there's two issues that come up immediately. One is there's so many opportunities. There's more opportunities than I can address. And there is a knee-jerk kind of reaction like, oh, I'll give $50, oh, I'll give $100, or I'll give $10, whatever that number is for you. It's just easier to act without thinking or praying or hearing the Holy Spirit than to do the real work of, Lord, what are you doing here? And that's what's always exciting, is doing what God is doing, not just doing something for the sake of doing it. It reminds me of Jesus saying, I didn't know you. You did all these things. Or the love chapter. If I give my body to be burned but don't have love, I'm worthless. The other practical thing that I encourage people to think about is the principle of progressive giving, so that we have a progressive tax structure. If you make $20,000, you pay a lower percentage of tax than if you make $100,000. What we've tried to do throughout our lifetime is be progressive in our giving. So it makes it a big curve if you are making more money, but you're also now giving a higher percentage, then you're giving a lot more. So, there are people who are multi-millionaires and give away 90% of what they have. They're still living very comfortably.
Yeah.
So
we're going to go into the next question, but I do want to make a quick disclaimer on that Mark's talking about the United States tax code. So for people living in the United States, that would be applicable. It's different in different countries. It's very interesting to watch how each of our regions are encountering philanthropy and really the need for it. It's different in each of our areas. But the truth is that each of our cultures is having to deal with and contend with through the kingdom realities that the generosity helps you. It does. So you're playing a part even in what's happening in your region, which is great. Okay, I really want to make sure we get to this question, and I think you guys will have some interesting perspectives. But think about this. Maybe you're a young professional that's watching this. You might currently be involved in a team, or you might be watching on Facebook Live. or you might download this later because some of these will turn into assets that'll be on YouTube. So what advice would you give to young professionals who are making money for the first time regarding their giving? Or also, I think one of the things that you guys could speak to really well, maybe it's a young professional who wants to go beyond career to really kind of calling, or to leverage their work life to make a difference. So there's the two sides. You're working a new job, and so you've got a little bit you could be generous with, but you're also working a job, and some of what we've heard today is that job could really be utilized for kingdom impact. What advice would you give? And just unmute yourself and jump in there.
Yeah, I'll just say something briefly. So one of the trends that we're seeing, especially with young people, is, maybe 20, 30 years ago, people, would tend to just kind of give from their heart, and give without doing a lot of research and seeing what they were impacting. And, sometimes it's good to be led by the Spirit, but, God says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. We're supposed to use our mind. And now with so many resources, with technology, the ability to network, we can really leverage all these resources to make sure that what we're giving to is impactful. And so I would just encourage young people to use your mind, use all the resources and the networks that you have available to make sure that what you're giving to is impactful. Because we all know that so many people give with good intentions, and sometimes giving, especially money, is not helpful. There's been several books on this, several articles written about just how helping hurts, or toxic charity. And so I think whether you're a foundation that has several staff members that are able to do due diligence, I think it's important. But even if you're just wanting a young professional that wants to give $20 or $100, I think it's important to make sure that that what you're giving to is really making an impact.
That's great, Chad. Thank you. Other panelists? Come on, Kim, you want to get in there, or did you just unmute?
I'll just say something real quick. One thing that was coming to mind was team and community. You can have a much bigger impact. There's two things. To what Chad was saying, you have more people involved, you can get some different perspectives on, hey, is this the best thing to be doing? Is this the cause or organizations you want to be giving to? But also, it's a lot more fun, and you have a bigger impact if you're doing things together. And so that's just one. Don't go it alone. It's one thought.
It's great. Anything from you, Kim?
Yeah, I guess I'm on the same page as Sam. Really, the idea of not going it alone. And as a young person, I think it's exciting to be in this place, and it's hard sometimes to find someone that has the wisdom and the experience around giving. As someone that's starting your philanthropic or economic ministry at a young age, there's so much opportunity. And so getting with other people that, or an organization that you can walk alongside with, I think is key.
Well, that is great. I really appreciate you guys today turning to engage this panel the way you've done. I would summarize one last thing just to say is that if you are a marketplace leader, I think we're just starting to tap into some of the real creative and powerful things that can happen. I think we turn the world into a strange spot when there are these groups that's their job to go make a difference, and then there are these groups that's their job to go work. And I think it's so much bigger than that. We've seen on our teams that some people are better at doing data entry, and some people are better at, connecting with the hardest to reach person in a neighborhood, and you need both of those. And I think we just have to see that it's a larger team, it's a larger group. And if you're a local team that hasn't engaged marketplace leaders, you're missing something. Jesus certainly did, and Paul himself was a marketplace. I don't know for sure leader, but he was definitely a marketplace guy. So please do that. But if you're a marketplace leader, our real hope is that to be able to cultivate here in the conference, and specifically as we also have a live version of it where we're back in person, where we're kind of cultivating these kind of conversations and looking for the kind of synergies you saw at the very beginning with First Class Eye Care and the video with Dr. Fan and Dr. Young. So really, really appreciate you guys on the board. Again, Dr. Woodruff and Karen, they are a huge part of all of our lives as global team members. You'll see them in your countries at times. They're a part of the conference every year, and you can see why they are so important to everybody. Sam is really critical. Think about it. If you're Kenya, you get to meet with Sam twice a week. But also, if you're looking for search engine optimization, you saw that. So please don't be afraid to reach out to Sam. Kim, honestly, has the coolest house in the world. It's right in Costa Rica, has a bunch of rooms, bunch of beds, really cool dining hall where so elegant, great place to take a whole family, Chad, to just go and experience Costa Rica. And she does such a good job of really helping groups take what's a trip to turn it into kind of a transformational experience. And so, and also is working really hard in her role as the board chair. And then Chad, I think on behalf of all of our teams and all of us, this is one opportunity where you get to have all of us here just to say thank you. Thank you for who you are and what you've done. And thank you to your family for coming the other day, and look forward to good discussions in the future. And hopefully you getting to be around these people more in person as well. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.